today to start the week powerful. We are because we're going to talk about better questions, better marketing, and this has come about. It's quite an interesting one. This because I always think we're all suffering at the moment under lead gen pressures, and it seems to be driving the whole plan at the moment. So I'm trying to get round some of those as issues in how we can save ourselves a bit of time and how we can think our way through this so that we're not lurching from one idea to the next. So this session, I'm hoping you'll get loads out of. I know you'll get loads out of. I don't know why I'm saying that. And I'd like to introduce my guest, but before I do, I better tell you who I am. I'm Katy, Howell. I've been 4 years in marketing, 20 years in social media. I've been around the block, basically. And my guest is who you'll see with matching hair. Sitting next to is Luan.
Hi, lovely to be here. We talked so many times. It's nice to bring others into the conversation.
Absolutely. And so Luan is a really interesting person because she's a B2B marketing consultant and a magnificent trainer and an author of, I don't know, 7 books, right?
6 are out, 2 more are in production. So it'll be 8 by November, and then I'm stopping. I am stopping.
Yeah, even the idea of it just no, no, I don't like writing if I can help it. So I love you. One of your books is Relax. It's only social media. I love that.
That was my first one. That was 2016, and you said you've worked in a social for a while. I've worked in social for a while. That was. That was the vibe in 2016, wasn't it? Like it was still a bit new, it was a bit shiny, and for those of us that have been in it maybe a little while, we were kind of like, it's okay. Like it is, it's just another channel. It's not this big hype over the top thing. Take what you already know and apply it to this other channel. And 10 years later, I think we've moved on a little bit, but not that much.
No. You've got a little bit stuck, and that's where I think your pragmatic and grounded view of marketing and how to cut through that panic is going to give us better thinking, and better thinking is going to make it feel less stressful because we're all under this incredible amount of pressure. So I'm gonna this is all about questions because we've kind of touched on this in other previous webinars where it's actually what you're asking. It's that moment of stillness before you start something. You go, have I got what I need? Or am I just jumping into the tactical side of things? But I think there's also this other pressure, which is the question I have for you, Luan, which is because particularly with all your training, all the training that you run, you must hear them all, which is you get asked the wrong questions. So what are the wrong questions marketers are still being asked?
Yeah, I think it's important to caveat that there is, we like to say there's no such thing as a daft question or a wrong question. I'd rather have the questions than people be too afraid to ask, and I know we're going to kind of talk about that in a bit as well. But I think that the challenge is the questions that are asked, whether it's in a meeting or whether it's in a training session, are so, and I absolutely love devil in the detail, but they seem to really focus on really granular things like what is the best time to post. Luckily, we've got rid of the what hashtag shall I use question now. How many posts a week? These kind of really like output related questions, which are key. And if you get to that stage and you're doing this day in, day out, and you're able to tweak and refine, brilliant. But if you're kind of early on in your journey and you're focusing on how many posts do I do a week, I'm sorry, what we end up with is happy Monday posts and Friday motivation kind of, posts for the sake of doing the posts rather than the quality. And my answers to that will always be, if your post isn't great, and it isn't aimed at the right audience and all those other things, doesn't matter when you're going to post it or how many times you post it. So actually, Katy, what I've started to do in my training sessions, because I've been doing this for so long, is that I actually I get those FAQs out straight away. It's almost like my second or third slide now. Like, I know what you're going to ask me. You're going to ask me, how many times a week do I post? What time of day? What about the algorithm? What about the hashtag? Let's do this, park it, and then we can move on and dive what I think the question should be and what you really need to know, which is kind of the don't know that I need to know. But yeah, those questions about outputs, we need to lose them.
Yeah, and I often get asked, what channel should you be on? What channel should I don't know. Where's your audience?
Yeah.
But I think the real fundamental line behind that is really interesting, because there's a study that shows, I think it's NIQ, that shows that 74% of CMOs are under more scrutiny to prove ROI. And the problem is with the questions that are, as you rightly say, which is when should we post, how do we increase followers? Those are not questions that are actually answering the ROI issue. They're not showing growth. They're not moving the needle on the business. And that, for me, is where the big challenge. For you, what do you think sits underneath those wrong questions? Why is it that we get asked?
Yeah,
kind of
I think there's a couple of things. I think the ROI question, is absolutely key and fundamental. But you and I know, Katy, from agency world and consulting. One of the first things we'll ask is, what do you think success looks like? What will success look like to you? What do you expect? And we would plan that at the very beginning as part of our objectives and our goals, or manage those expectations. Whereas I think ROI measurements and feedback and reviews come 2 or 3 months, if not even years down the line. And then you get but that's not what I expected, or that's not what we thought, or this didn't work. So I think we're not having the solid strategic questions early enough, and we're trying to do things kind of behind the curve rather than in front of it. That's where it happens. And I think then what we get with those kind of measurement questions at the end is, our reach has dropped. How do we change the reach? Something tactical again, versus leads have dropped or opportunities. It's all about the data within the social media platforms, rather than have we got the opportunities we wanted? How's our pipeline looking? How's our turnover and everything else? We come back very tactical, a bit like we used to in the call center days of, how many calls are you doing? How many appointments have you booked? How many meetings? It feels like we're still doing that in a social world, but maybe that's because that's what people understand and what they're comfortable with. So actually the other piece is educating about what we can do and what we should be asking. So there's quite a lot to unpack there, I think.
Yeah, and I always feel it's I totally understand it, why often our senior leadership team ask those questions. Social is not on their radar as a big thing, but they know this cornerstone. Oh, if you've got lots of followers, if it goes viral, it's good. So I totally understand, but we need to course correct. And I think this is really important, because otherwise what I find is you yourself are struggling to meet a goal that the leadership team is setting you, because you're not asking the right questions back at them. And it is a bit of an art, a marketeer's art, to ask, well, what do you mean by that? What do you think that will deliver? How does that impact? What value will the business get out of it as you see it? You don't have to be confrontational, but we do need to dig deep, because then we spend a lot more time doing the stuff that makes a difference. And you mentioned something there that really resonates with me, which is that reach can go up, it can drop down. But actually the thing that matters is that even if your reach drops down, if your leads are still good quality and of the same number, then the reach is irrelevant. It just means your targeting is better.
Exactly. It doesn't matter, does it?
Lagging.
I think one of the challenges, and I've just scribbled this down, and dare I say, comparing ourselves to ChatGPT and AI tools. But when we're asked questions, we're trying to please. We're trying to give the response because we want to be helpful. It's exactly what the AI tools you've asked me a question, I need to respond to it. Is it time? Is it resources? All those challenges around it. But we don't, question things often because we literally do want to please and move on and be helpful and almost not put up barriers to things by opening up a big can of worms, because actually that's not the right question. Tell me what the problem is and then let me help diagnose the root. That's the other kind of tactical response.
Yeah. And before I get into that, tell me this, exactly the same. So I always get, when I do my mentoring with my mentors, I was getting to rehearse a couple of those segues till they're set heads, and then it becomes very natural to say, yes, we can look at reach, but first, before we do, can we have a look at, because then I will understand what that means. And you can do it in a very polite way like that without it being confrontational, because sometimes people feel that asking questions of senior people can be difficult.
Yeah, I think it's not always, you don't need the question mark on the end. It's just saying, can I just confirm my understanding? Can I just clarify the context of this? What's the bigger picture? Has anything else happened, or is anything else impacting this right now? Just so I can understand how I could best respond to you. Yeah.
So what does this sort of future ready marketing, what is it? What we know that marketing teams are stretched already. So how do we make flip into the future state of being the calm thing?
Yeah. So Katy, a huge thank you. That my 8th book that will be out in November is called The Future of B2B Marketing. So Katy has kindly helped guide my thinking, sense check with me, review, because we all need that. And I'll share with you that when I started, when I pitched the title and I started working on the book, The Future of B2B Marketing, I was really excited. I was like, I'm going to do some future gazing. I'm going to think about what the industry looks like in 3 years, 5 years time, like where are we going to shift to? And actually, when I started writing, after I'd gathered research, because I'm a researcher first, I download and I search, all the Gartner stuff, all the McKinsey stuff, everything else. And I was comparing that to what I know from experience of 20 plus years. I was like, nothing's changed. Like, there is, some elements of change and some tactics have changed, but fundamentally things haven't changed. So I sat here and went, well, if it hasn't changed in 20 years, is the next 3 years really going to look that different? And then realised that the challenge was, as marketers, we're not future ready, because we're asking some of the wrong questions. We haven't got the basics in place. We're constantly firefighting and focusing on lead gen versus brand building. So for me, my framework that came within the book of being future ready was based on strong marketing fundamentals, supportive technology, and then being future ready with the decision-making frameworks to help you in a rational moment make the right smart decisions. So again, it's a bit like being asked a question. We want to make decisions quickly and move on, but sometimes we need some data to back that up, or some context to back that up. So for me, it's more about take steps back to be able to move forward.
And the bit that I love the most is, and probably the one I waxed the most lyrical with you about, was marketing fundamentals, because ultimately many of us have come to social media and marketing even from all sorts of routes, all sorts of journey. I mean, I actually did genetics. Genetics is my degree. I mean, how I've ended up here is beyond me. So I think that one of the principles is that in the process, we don't need to reinvent the wheel, and we keep reinventing the wheel, and people keep coming up with these, oh, look, if you do this, that'll happen. But actually, if you have marketing qualifications, or at least the fundamentals in place that you put in place, you find the answers are there. They've been done for again and again. The world has not changed quite as much as you said, plus they say in France. The more things change, the more they stay the same. It is that challenge that what we have to do as social media folk is know our marketing, understand the marketing that sits behind it. So and your framework, this book is brilliant. I would make this compulsory reading. Sorry, I would, because that's exactly what it does. It says, here's the basics, and here's how you can use these now, and this is how it will help you in the future. Genius. Genius.
Thank you. But I will say, yes, I've written a lot of books and I do training, and my degree was business studies and marketing, so I have one of maybe the rare paths where I've followed that through. But there is also a difference between learning it and doing it, and then being able to explain it as well. And I say, being a consultant, I have the privilege to maybe have a bit of headspace and time to do that as well, because even when I was writing the book and when I approached you and some other peers, it was like, I know this stuff, but now I'm trying to write it and explain it and make it current and apply to today's channels. Have I got this right? Have I not got this right? And actually, I was going backwards and forwards quite a lot. And then it was like, does this fit, and which bit comes first, and have I missed this bit out? So sometimes it's also a challenge when you're in a role. Do you get the opportunities to use all of your learnings and all of your tools and stay up to date and look at what everyone else around you is doing as well? And it's tough out there to do that.
And I think I love what you're saying, because actually that's the thing about this book and these kind of training sessions that you do, which is taking people through that thought process with you, like a guided process. And I do think that, if you just, for much of what goes on marketing, no, we don't need to know everything, but here are the fundamentals that really, honestly, once you've got them in place, you think, is it really that simple? Do we really need to do it like that? And you think, yes. The problem is, it is that simple, and we keep trying to overcomplicate it. But here's the bottom line: this is what will make the difference. So I think, but one of the other elements that we've touched on as well in the past in our previous chats is, okay, so you've got these fundamentals. Can AI help us? Where is AI helping us, and where is it making a mess?
It can help us. But I think it's, again, if you don't know what you're asking it and you've got the context, you're not going to get it's then more about the outputs rather than the detail. And working in agency world, when I started working in agency world, we weren't allowed to write and submit a brief quickly. We had to wait at least 24 hours between a client meeting and submitting our brief into the studio or third-party suppliers, whatever it was, because our account director was like, no, you need to sleep on this, you need to think about it, you need to write the key takeaways. Like, you are not doing this as a copy and paste of a previous one or anything. Like, you will spend your time on the brief, because otherwise you won't get the right outputs later on. And I think we've got that same challenge with AI at the moment of, we think that we can ask quick prompts and questions, but actually, if we give it context, if we tell it the role it's playing and what you really want to know, which is where the thinking comes in, it's a great partner for doing that. But we can't just be going, give me 10 titles for a good blog. Like, who's the blog for? What's your tone of voice? And all those other things. So it is a great tool, but I think we're using it for the really quick wins, the lazy stuff, rather than actually going, I've got a sparring partner here that I can really push and that can push back on me as well to get some good thoughts and ideas going.
And I think, I'm so with you, because I think it's part of the reason why I think us oldies that have been around ask the right questions of AI, because we'd do it if it was sitting next to a colleague, we'd go, and so I'm going to give it our listeners some quick ones, which are really easy, which is the 5 whys. I love the 5 whys. Just keep asking why 5 times. So why is this important? Why? The other one is, so what? So you're telling me 56 people will have 56% of blah, 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 blah. So what? I use that a lot with my data analysis from social listening. And the final one is, what if? What if this happens? So those are so really, really nice, easy ones. But if you play them in your head, I always find that they allow you to they force you in a way, as you said, with a proper brief, but they force you to interrogate AI. Particularly if you're asking it to do something like a SWOT analysis. It really force it to actually think a little bit more, or at least do the research and allow you to do the thinking.
And I think the other thing with those prompts is also, as I said, like context. Like if it was to do a SWOT, have you told it that your market is based in the UK and is, you know, this profile? Because otherwise it's going to be really generic and not relevant as well. One of the best tips I heard, and forgive me, I can't remember who said this, because we read all this stuff as we're scrolling all the time, but I always say, how confident are you in the answers that you're giving me? And if not, what's the gap? So I'll wait for the response and say, how confident are you that's correct? And if it comes back at, oh, I'm 75%, well, what could we do to improve this? Or I use it to say, this is the scenario. What do you need to know from me to help me do this? So ask the questions that the AI tool needs to know, the same as we would. And then, you know, what are the gaps? What am I missing? As well as, you know, taking the response as it is. So just keep prodding it. Yeah. Until you run out. If you're using a free one and it says you've run out of questions, which is, I purposely do this because then I'm like, I now need to walk away, think about this, and then come back to it later. So I intentionally use a free version for that reason, to give me more thinking space.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a fab tool in the right place, but I do think this is also, you know, it's not the questions that we get asked, it's the questions we ask our teams, colleagues, and seniors, but it's also the questions we ask AI. So we've got a little comment here from CJ. Sorry, I have to put my glasses on because I can't put it, but I'll put it up. I wonder how many businesses watching this know that they're seeing posts for the sake of posts in their company feed, but are avoiding doing anything about it because they don't have the right content engine built to deliver the meaningful and business impacting content required. Do you know, I mean, it's more a statement than a question, but it's actually taking a pause here because I want to remind everybody, please ask questions. We love questions. That's what we're talking about. But I actually think this is a really good point, because fundamentally what tends to happen is we set off this engine, which is now a wheezy old thing that grinds its way to it's like a wheezy old engine going forward, pumping out content, because that's the scorecard at the end of the day. And ultimately the beauty of the questions is it revamps your engine, it puts you on the right tracks so that you can be, you know, speedy train and actually getting to the point where you're actually delivering things at the right time in the right place. So I think there's, you know, I might take that analogy. Sorry.
That's right. But I think if you, it feels like a while since we, you know, we started to unpack this together, and then we do this as a live. One of the big things was about not being afraid to ask questions. So if you're watching this, you can see that Katy and I are quite happy to ask questions and probe. But maybe early career wasn't so confident in doing that, or prepared to do that, or I knew something wasn't right, but I didn't really know how to phrase that and turn that. So there was this whole kind of confidence piece as well around, it's okay to ask questions, and you should ask questions to put things into context, because dare I say, otherwise, as marketers, we may be seen as, you know, the old colouring in department, the doers and the outputters, rather than that we can add strategic value and that we do have a voice and we do have something to say. So don't fear asking the questions. Think about your questions are actually adding value to the conversation and the eventual solution, rather than being a hindrance or something like that.
So it's a good point, but where are the areas that marketers should be asking questions? What are the things, even if they're not asking them out loud, what are the questions they should be asking themselves?
Yeah, I think it's about just understanding the context of the situation as well, because we know, I've sat in offices, I've sat in meetings, it's like, can you do this? Or can we create this? Or can we make this happen? You'll quickly kind of go, yeah, how many do you need? Or when do you need them by? And what's the deadline? We go down that tactical route, rather than kind of going, okay, thanks for the question. Can you just give me a bit more understanding? What's the context? I've had one really recently that I was asked for an output, and I kind of went, I'm not sure that that's actually available and that's an option. What are you trying to achieve? Like, what are we trying to do and why? And what's the context to that? And sometimes it's an internal change management related issue. Sometimes it's kind of internal organizational structures, or dare we say it, an ego campaign versus, you know, a lead gen campaign. We've all done some of those as well. So actually, just, I think, pausing before you go, yeah, we can do that when you need it, by going, okay, I'll take that, but can you give me some more background to this one? So I think it's always asking for the background. And even if you've done this a million times over, maybe then it's saying, is there anything different now that I should be aware of to when we last did this campaign? Because the world is changing so fast that the context that we're doing something in tomorrow is different to when we did it 6 months ago and 12 months ago. So I think context is the key.
It's interesting. I totally agree, because I've just done some analysis this last week, looking at what's changing in terms of our audience behaviors. And it's really interesting, because although we're seeing the reflection of that in our algorithms, by the way, which is, you know, all the algorithms are beginning to care more about dwell time, saving, whether or not people are actually following the next story in the story.
Yeah.
And all of these things. I mean, particularly LinkedIn, it's very obvious, but you can actually see it on Instagram too these days. But actually, what you're really seeing is the algorithm reflecting audience behaviors. So what you'll see is your endless content, your Wisdom Wednesdays and Motivation Mondays are being swept up very quickly. The more meaningful, resonating content is the stuff that's getting saved and held on to. And that is the signal where we should be looking at. And I think the reason why I say that is the question for us as marketers to ask ourselves is this useful or helpful to our audiences?
Yeah.
And how have what are we trying to change in their belief or their behavior? You know, are we trying to get them to go off and ask their colleagues to take part in a buying group? Are they trying to encourage a bigger budget, or you know, all of these things? So you have to understand what you're trying to get your audience to do, rather than taking it from your perspective, going, we've got a webinar next week. How do you get a webinar out the door? And that's the thing, isn't it? Sorry.
Yeah, well, but those what we would say, the calls to action and the engagement has changed from comment below and like this, if you agree, to be the shares and the saves. So we know this, the platforms are telling us this, so we need to shift towards that. And whenever I'm reviewing content, whether it's my own or working with others, I'm going through, is there a know, think, feel, or do to this? And it's okay if it's just people will know something when they've done this. They'll know something more about our business, about me, what I'm working on, what I value. Like, that's okay. But then think about how can I make this post something that people would share with a colleague or save for later. And sometimes you do have to go, if it hasn't got that, do you know what? I'll just move on and create something else tomorrow, because otherwise it's just an output and it's noise and it's not going to be helpful. And isn't there that quote, I can't remember who it's attributed to, Porter, I think, strategy is choosing what not to do is just as important as what you do as well. So it sounds harsh, but we're talking about this in business terms. So if our posts aren't going to achieve something, why are we doing it? Why are we putting the effort into it? So if someone can learn something, but yeah, absolutely. I'm always like, now, would someone share this? And that could be share it privately. It could be screenshot it. I share a lot of stuff in DMs. Like, have you seen this? Have you spotted this? This is a great podcast you should listen to. Not everything needs to be public, and we need to shift away from thinking we need some public content so we're still visible, but the relationship building, the know, like and trust, those conversations happen behind the scenes.
Yes, dark social, the joy of
Yeah.
dark social.
Yeah.
In fact, about that kind of questions, and I love your, is this useful? Is this knowledgeable? Is this that kind of stuff? So I love those kind of things. But if you can see the little QR code in the corner, and I'll pop it in the transcript for you.
Try
Wrong way.
the way.
But this is a little diagnostic tool, but it asks the right questions you should be asking yourselves about your LinkedIn company profile. So you might be quite surprised at what it's asking, but what it will do is give you a score as to whether or not it's likely that your LinkedIn company page is actually delivering business benefit. I want to go on to something that's really important in this, because you're really talking about quality and deep content. And one of the things that I feel that we need to do more of, and I'm sure lots of people feel this way, is thought leadership. So where does thought leadership earn its keep? Because it is fundamentally a question-based kind of piece of content, isn't it? So talk to me, where does thought leadership earn its keep?
Isn't this, as marketers, we like some buzzwords, don't we? And latest things that we're all doing, and chief execs, the C-suite, like, I want to be seen as a thought leader. I think it comes back to, again, if I ask a question like why, and what do you want to be seen, what do you want to be known for? Who needs to know you for that topic, that opinion, that stance, that voice, and then work backwards from it. And I would say thought leadership content doesn't need to be, you said the word deep, it doesn't need to be big stuff, because that takes a long time for us to create, whether it's written or it's video. It doesn't need to be big stuff. It's more like the consistent storytelling narrative of, this is who I am, this is what we do, this is what we stand for, here's the evidence and the social proof of it. It's more about positioning where you are in the marketplace than the output of a big article or a white paper or something. But you've got to kind of think about, are they really a thought leader? Have they got the evidence to back this up? And what do you want this thought leadership positioning to create? Is it because you want speaker opportunities? Is it because you want to be on the tender list? Work backwards, rather than everyone's talking about thought leadership content and this is what I need to do now, because the same as, I need to do video content. We're just so all shiny without actually kind of, dare I say, even actually questioning the term and what it means.
Yes, and I have it's one of my bugbears, because it has the word thought in it, and you need to give it some thought. One of the things that I feel is really, I do a little mini training course, which I did for the Marketing Society on thought leadership. One of the things that, beyond the obvious, is that, often you will have a big thought leadership thing you want to talk about. It could be, I don't know, I'm making this up, say the use of AI in marketing. Yeah. The key here is to go around all your subject matter experts and ask them the right questions. So internally, you'll have your expertise or your leadership or whatever it is. You go, look, we've done this big report on AI and marketing. What do you think? And you probe them carefully with a number of questions. Where what you're trying to do is, and I just record those. When I do them, I record them. When I speak to my colleagues at Immediate Future, I record them. I tell them I'm recording them. I ask them a bunch of questions. And then I take that recording and I run it through AI to get the points out of it. So, and then I go away and think about what does that mean, and what does that mean to the audience? Now, because one of the biggest challenges is nearly all of the companies that I've ever worked for have the big bit of thought leadership. What they don't have is all the different storytells within that. And that's the bit that's missing, because they don't go and ask what all the different storytells are. I mean, go and sit in your engineering department and go ask them.
Yeah.
Who have we worked with? Who's sitting alongside it? Do you know what I mean? It's just...
I think the other challenge with thought leadership is it's also got grouped in with the term personal brand, which people find a bit ick. And also with I need to have a big audience. And actually, to be seen as a thought leader, it doesn't need to be about big audiences or, you know, the topics do segue into each other. But you only need to, particularly in B2B, you don't need to be a thought leader amongst hundreds of thousands of millions of people. It's more in your niche, in your topic. And that's kind of where the magic happens. And as we said, like the relationship building and everything else. So I think we also need to pull the thought leadership away from going back to it being about, I can only be a thought leader because if I have this many followers, or I've got this many followers, I'm now a thought leader. They're two different things.
Yes,
that's a whole different webinar, isn't it?
Yeah,
sorry.
Yes.
Yeah.
We touched briefly on your book, but one of the things that I really like about what you've written for this is the fact that it has lots of frameworks in it. And one of the things is could you maybe explain what's useful around a decision framework, and what would that include?
Yeah, I'm smiling because I had to double check. I was like, Katie's going to ask me about the framework, so I double checked because the thing about writing is it's, there's such a time lag as well between you being so intense in writing and then it goes off into production. You're like, I don't need to think about this. And I think, again, what I'll say to you is, like, I've done the training, I've done the qualifications over the years, and sometimes I think, is it still relevant? Is it not? Am I kind of going back to old school? And then you start writing and thinking about how you're going to explain this to others. And you go, do you know what? These traditional frameworks, like you mentioned, SWOT, PESTLE, they just work. They were developed for a reason. They can be applied in so many different ways. So the two that I checked before this session were, it's called Eisenhower, but it's very simple, 2 by 2, urgent, not urgent, important, not important. Where do you need to focus? What do you need to delegate? And actually, wouldn't we all just like, we don't need to do this. It's not going to change the world. It doesn't matter. We'll scrap that off our list. We don't need to do it. So love lists, put them in a box. What can you focus on? And having that priority as well. And I think that then is similar to the other framework that I like, is like weighted decisions. So it's like, I'm looking for a new social media management tool. I've got my criteria down the left-hand side. I've got my tools along the top, and I'm going to score them all out of 5. We don't just want to score everything out of 5, because actually price, like one factor, might be more important than the user interface. So we then need to weight each of those criteria and multiply them out, so we get a weighted decision rather than just raw 1 out of 5, because otherwise you could end up buying a tool because it looks nice versus it being cost effective and practical with number of user logins, etc. So use the traditional frameworks. They work. Yes, we're always creating new ones, but they're usually just a tweak on something that already exists. They're not broken.
No, and I love them. I still use the Eisenhower one, for instance. First thing in the morning, first thing Monday, last thing Friday, always do that, so I know what's coming up in my task list and what is actually, because I also have the sort of brain that wants to do the fun stuff, and I have to, as they say, there's another book, eat the frog. I have to do the horrible thing first, otherwise I won't get to it. But I think this is really good. The fundamentals, the thing is, you can say, oh, it's just a SWOT analysis, but actually when you go through it, these are the basics of planning. And one of the elements that I have always liked about them is that in doing these frameworks, you're thinking about things in different ways. It's a bit like kind of talking your way through your problems, isn't it? It's kind of you're looking at it in different shapes. And quite often what happens is you sort of step away and you come back and you look at what you've done and you go, oh my God, there it is staring at me. So it's like the basics of planning. And the thing is, if you use those in every day, it's amazing how much stuff you can get out of it.
But I think the key is to see them as a framework. And there is many people, academics, practitioners, that say SWOT doesn't work anymore, it's irrelevant. And that's probably because many of us have been in a meeting where we'll do, let's do a quick SWOT exercise, and you put the 4 headings up and you want 3 bullet points under each one, and you go, that's it. That's filling in boxes. That's not using a framework. That's when you then need to go So what does this mean? What can we, what's important, what's not important, what can we control, what can't we control? And often, you know, the first bit is done and we go, oh, we've used a tool. You haven't used a tool. You've written some points down. We've got to have the thinking time. I think that's what we're really missing, isn't it? Is having that time to think, but it will reap the rewards.
Absolutely. And I mean, that was the purpose of this series, which is we haven't got time to think, is really what I was kind of getting at. We haven't got time to think. It's really just in the melee that we're living at the moment. It's tough to find a bit of space. And let's face it, when we finish work, we're completely, if you're like me, a complete vegetable.
Ready for a nap.
Just like, so if you were dropped, Luan, if you were dropped into a very stretched B2B marketing team tomorrow, what would you fix?
Yeah, I think I would ask questions first, but I would be asking what's working and what's not working. And actually, I've been putting a presentation deck together this morning around what would you start, what would you stop, and what would you scale. So I would have a conversation, and again, I'd have those headings of like, if this isn't working or you can't explain this to me, we're going to stop doing it. What can we start doing? Because I know what's happening in the environment or the competitors and everything else. And then what do we keep doing and try and scale? So I think it's just sometimes just having an hour to explain something to someone else and then digest it and take away. That's a huge amount of value in that. So I'd say, you know, what's not working and why? Can we fix it? Do we not need to worry about it? And then the big question, like, but what were you expecting? And if you can understand what someone's expectations are or what their goals are, then actually I'd probably ignore the rest and just really hone in and go, well, if that's what you want to happen, this is how we're going to make it happen.
And in your experience, having spoken to so many teams, what do you think that you hear commonly that you go, this is what marketing needs to stop doing now?
Yeah. I think, again, I'll use the word privilege because maybe that sounded a bit easier and flippant. I hope it didn't. But internally, someone will say, but they won't like that, or we can't do that because, or we've tried this before. And as an outsider with fresh eyes, you've not got that in your head, really. It's almost like, again, tell me the problem, tell me what you're trying to do, and I'll help get there. Other elements will always come into play within organisations that you then need to manage, but then you're kind of like, how can we manage that barrier, that challenge that's getting in the way of doing what we really should be doing? So maybe there's a risks and barriers understanding as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And in fact, quite often it's that element which we kind of bundle up as the politics sometimes that can cause more problems than anything else. And it is definitely and
it'll be something like, because someone's told me I need to post 4 times a day. It will usually be someone told me that, or we've always done it this way. So it comes back to us just challenging things, but in the right way, that you're seen to be adding value to something rather than, oh, I don't know, that's why I'm asking, because no one wants to be the I don't know kind of response.
And when do you think, you know, because that's actually a really good segue into when does marketing lose credibility in some business, and how do we win it back? Because to a certain extent, you know, coming out asking a lot of questions, if already the marketing is seen as the colouring in department, how do we win that credibility back?
Yeah, I think this is the major issue, and I think this is one of the things that I DM'd you, like, have you seen this video? Marketing has lost credibility. You know, marketing is not great at marketing its own profession and value, what we can do. So we do have an issue there, and a little bit of it is self-perpetuating as well. But I think it's about, again, it's showing that you can add value. It is showing that you're strategic and that you're not just saying, okay, so you want some flyers by next week, how many do you want and what size do they need to be? Like, we don't need to ask our colleagues those questions. We're the experts on that. Let's dive into the challenge and show our value rather than being seen as like the producers. I think that's the challenge.
Yeah.
And that, because everyone does think that they know about marketing and can do marketing, and sometimes that is through their own previous experience with their own marketing teams as well. So we've got to go back and educate them and go, I don't need you to tell me how many we need to print, that's my job. Tell me what you're trying to achieve and what message you want to get across and everything else. So we have to work really hard at this. We're in an unregulated industry. We don't have a great perception. So we have to work harder if we want to be seen to be adding value. And that's often because we're not the ones closing the sales or doing the deals, even though we are doing the thinking and understanding the customers. We are representing our customers within the business.
That's a spot on. And it's so much worse, I think, in social, because not because people don't think that social is important to the business, which is, 20 years ago, they didn't really understand what it meant, but predominantly because social, everybody can access social in a way that not everybody can access, out of home advertising or TV advertising. So what happens is everybody can access it, everybody sees it, everybody thinks they can do it. And that, it can be almost as frustrating to have your CFO or CEO. Oh, but I saw this, or my son does that on TikTok, and we could do it.
Katy, I'm smiling because didn't we have this 15 years ago when it was the first websites that we were building, and we would do the strategic planning, and this is what we were going to do. We were taking brochures, and then you would, my nephew knows how to do that. I think that challenge has always existed in marketing. It's just changing channel. It's more about, I think often in business, perceptions of social media are related primarily to how people are using it personally. So it's how they see Facebook and their likes and dislikes, how they see their children using TikTok. And people find it quite difficult to go, I've got my work hat on now. How am I going to use this for my business role? So again, we've got a bit of a challenge. It's free, it's easy to access, it's on our phone, there's connotations. But I think the other challenge, organisations large and small, is where does social media sit? Because it doesn't always, within some larger organisations, sometimes it sits within comms, sometimes it sits within marketing. They can be two different things. Sometimes marketing sits within sales, within B2B. So actually, social, because it can achieve so many different things, sometimes it's quite hard to give it a home in the same way that web or SEO and other things can be within a team, that it just becomes a bit diluted in terms of what it really could do if someone had a focus on what they're trying to do with social.
What a great idea, because I'm sitting here thinking, oh my God, we're running out of time. It's really annoying. Before we go, then, one piece, just one thing that always strikes you, having had this conversation of us needing to ask more questions, what are the one or two things that you could say to our listeners?
Yeah. It's a habit to get into. Maybe you say them in your head first before you do have the confidence to say them out loud. If you do ask a question, like, what's the worst that could happen? I don't think there's a huge amount that can happen. But if you take a step back, maybe one of the easiest things to do is explain your thinking or explain your approach. So kind of start with explanations of why you do what you do and how you do it, which will move into the bigger picture questions later on. So take it in steps, but just, I think, Katy, just ask why. Like, why and what's the point?
The annoying 2-year-old, why?
Yes, yeah. Annoy yourself. It doesn't need to be out loud. It can be that you sit in that meeting and you just take it in, and then you go back and you sit down and go, why did that question happen? Why didn't I say this? You can go back afterwards. So you're always learning. And Katy and I have been doing this a long time, but I didn't do it 20 years ago. I wish I had, but it will come over time. And how do I summarize this? This is the topic that we were talking about, wasn't it? Like, better questions, honestly, will make for better marketing.
Yes.
because we're not focused on outputs, we're focused on impacts.
Oh, there's a soundbite. Thank you so much. It has been, it has been an absolute delight. I hope we've been useful for the audience. We haven't had many questions for a show all about questions. Nobody's asked any, but anyway, should you think of a question afterwards, we do keep an eye on our comment section, so we'll jump in. So if you think there are certain areas, we've tried to cover everything, I think, from the questions we ask our leadership team, our colleagues, our audiences, ourselves, AI. We've covered everything in terms of what we question. So I feel really strongly that we've probably given you a little bit of food for thought. And yeah, keep asking questions. Thanks, Luan.
Thanks, Katy. See you soon.